Welcome, everybody. Wednesday, May 24th. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report. Woo! Oh, and another birthday. Happy birthday, Dan. I'm not sure who Dan is, but I see everybody saying happy birthday, Dan. So happy birthday, Dan. Anyway, welcome, guys. This is the Aravosis Report, my nightly show Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, where I talk about the latest news from Ukraine. Let me get TikTok rolling here on my iPad. And as always, we're going to wait 2 or 3 minutes for folks to arrive, and then we will get rolling. Hello, Otanbati, Norway. All right. There we go. Boom. All righty. Woo. Oh, I know I did. I saw the pictures of the Gerald Ford visiting today. Very cool. Very cool. The U.S. aircraft carrier is in Oslo today in Norway. So very neat. Anyway, welcome all. My sip of water. 5 p.m. in Chicago where I am. Normally, actually, I will be going back to D.C. this weekend, so I will be there this weekend. Hey, TikTokers. Welcome you all. Oh, anyway, yeah. So as you guys know, we're going to wait about 2 minutes for folks to arrive. And then once everybody gets here, we will start the show. Anyway, got my hair cut today. Woo, thank God. So I no longer have to fidget with my hair, at least not for another 6 weeks. And then it gets long enough that I have to fidget again. Anyway. Hi, Diane. Hey, guys. I'm trying to see. We got actually, as always, it's the news doesn't look like it's long today, but I'm sure it'll be long. Because there's a lot of in-depth things to talk about today. Thank you, Tom, for the gift already on TikTok there. Appreciate the boxing rube. Thanks, Diane. Appreciate that. I can't always see all of your guys' comments, but I do try. So I'm trying to, as we're waiting to start the show, kind of try to look. Lithuania, very cool. Try to sort of just look in and see. The carrier was in Halifax. Interesting. Oop. Thank you, John, for the little heart, the head heart thing. Or Jay. Sorry, did I say John? Jay. Sorry about that. No sound on Twitch. There should be sound on Twitch. Well, actually, everybody else has sound. You guys have sound? You all here on YouTube, etc. I'm hoping. Hold on, let me look here real quick. Audio, Blue Snowball. Yeah, should be fine then. Sound works on Twitch. Maybe reboot if you're on Twitch and it's not working for you. Okay, you guys are working good. I know the hair is cut, so I don't have to. Oh, thank you, Martin, for the heart there. I knew something flew across the screen when I was looking down. McFadge for the confetti. Thank you. Woo! All right, guys. I think we're ready to start. So welcome, everybody. That's okay. Wolfie, don't worry about it. Thank you, Happy Beach, for that. So I am John Aravosis. Welcome all. This is my show, the Aravosis Report, my nightly show here. I was going to say on CNN. I don't know why I'm in CNN mode today. I've got all the gifts coming in and you guys are confusing me. Thank you, Michael, for the TikTok gift and Michael for the chili and Tom Clark for the heart me. So the way this works is I talk about the latest news from Ukraine, and then the second half of the show, I take your guys' questions. I've got TikTok over here on my iPad, and then over here on my laptop, I've got YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Thank you, Kanowski, for the guitar there. And thank you, Thomas, for the heart. And there we go. So the way this will work is, as I said, the second half of the show will be your guys' questions. For those of you on TikTok, feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A link that is in my profile. Just go to my profile and look, and you'll see Q&A. For the rest of you on YouTube, etc., you can use the comment box at the bottom. And as always, I very much appreciate your guys' gifts because I do this for free. I do it full-time. I decided to just work full-time doing the news on Ukraine when the war broke out. So no one pays me except you all. So thank you, EBT family there. If you guys can support me with your gifts on TikTok and your gifts with your super chat questions and super stickers, I very much appreciate it. So thank you. Let's get rolling, guys. It is day 454 of Vladimir Putin's 10-day special military operation in Ukraine. I thought I would start, thank you, Mads, for the heart there. I thought I would start talking about the insurgents. So this story, which we've been hearing about for a few days now, of probably Ukraine coordinated with some Russian, disaffected Russian, either soldiers, former soldiers, etc. And they set up an attack against Russia. And a couple days ago, these guys crossed the border and right here around Kharkiv in Ukraine, so northeastern Ukraine, crossed the border, and they invaded several small towns here. This is the region of Belgorod. They invaded the small towns, freaked the Russians out, took actually the towns captive, and really just freaked the Russians out. This was so good on a number of levels. And again, it pretty much looks like the Ukrainians probably did it. Thank you, Nate, for the heart. Pretty much looks like the Ukrainians did it, but they organized disaffected Russians. Some of these guys, at least allegedly, thank you, Mads. And who was that? Oh, an MP MP195. One of the, and Ellie for the mariachi hat, one of the possibilities of who these guys are, okay? Thank you, Juju. One of the possibilities of who these guys are is some of them may actually be Russian soldiers who attacked Ukraine and gave up. There are certainly reports. Thank you, Nate. We've got actually a whole slew of new auction items out right now on our Discord. And remember, we do the auctions and like 50% of the money goes to Ukraine, 50% is to support my work. I get real cool stuff from Ukraine. And one of the things we've got is I've got it in DC though. I've got pictures up, but I've got the actual item, or I could show you guys when I get back next week, is a piece of a Russian fighter jet that got shot down over Ukraine last year. But what's interesting about it is I was doing the research on the jet and the pilot and everything and found out that the Ukrainians claimed that this Russian pilot joined the Russian Legion. So basically this group of fighters, thank you, Jay and Hazel there for the gifts, EBT, that this guy joined a group of Russian fighters fighting for Ukraine. Who knows, but it sounds like that is part of what this group is, that at least supposedly attacked Russia in the last did attack Russia in the last few days, but we just don't know exactly who these guys are. I mean, we have an idea who they are, but I'm still wondering, again, are they disaffected fighters? Like, what are they? In any case, just a little more sort of fallout on that. It looks like the fight is over for now. It's not entirely clear. There is still reporting claiming that some of these guys are still fighting little bits across the border. What is most likely, which would make the most sense, is this was meant as a psychological operation first and as sort of a strategy or tactical operation as well. In that, one, the idea was to embarrass Vladimir Putin, right? They're coming up for the big counteroffensive right now, and the idea was to freak Putin out and to freak Russians out so that it looks like Putin is a weak leader, right? Thank you, Yuki, for the gift there. To make him look like a weak leader. That's the first thing. Second thing, though, and this is huge, is that this attack across the border was meant to force the Russians to move troops up to this region to defend it in the future. Now, they crossed up here around Kharkiv, okay? These guys invading Russia. They also allegedly crossed the border up here by Sumy. At least that's what they're saying. So Kursk region as well, right? Now, it doesn't really matter if it's here or here. What is important about that is nowhere near the expected counteroffensive. It is expected that the counteroffensive of the Ukrainians, the big pushback they're going to do, is probably going to be around here. I mean, it's going to be everywhere. They're going to be attacking Crimea. They're going to be attacking over here. But the expectation is, certainly if you're Russian, you're expecting that Zaporizhia province, Kherson province, these are the big ones that Ukraine's going to try to go after first, potentially. Well, if Ukraine's going after here, guess where you don't want your troops if you're Russia? You don't want your troops all the way up here on the border worrying about a Ukrainian attack or a secret Russian attack along your border up here. If the big fighting is going on down here, that is probably the number one reason that this attack happened. To freak the Russians out, to force the Russians to move troops all the way up here and here so that now they've got to defend their border much more than they were defending before. Thank you, Phil. And it basically takes troops away from where the counteroffensive is probably going to happen. So it weakens the Russian troops, their ability to fight back against the Ukrainians when the Ukrainians finally attack. So brilliant move. I mean, by the Ukrainians who probably helped organize this. Thank you, Inspired Woman, for the seal. By the Ukrainians who helped organize it, and anybody else involved. Little bit more here now. Igor Girkin. I've quoted you guys about this before. Thank you, Beaches. I can see the trolls are freaked out. What's been really interesting too the last couple of days, we've had we always get Russian trolls on our broadcast because we're popular. What do you do? And they like my new haircut. But they've been really freaking out the last couple of days because this attack across the border freaked Putin out. And he's got like the troll farms going in overtime trying to push back, because how do you push back about the fact that you lost a bunch of land to a bunch of to just like a bunch of guys, right? In any case, Igor Girkin, interesting guy, war criminal, military blogger, former Russian paramilitary commander in Ukraine. He's the guy one of the few responsible for shooting down that civilian jetliner back like 2014 or whenever it was. Girkin said in the last day, that if the news of the border attacks were true, quote, then the inevitable creation of a continuous front along this border, which will have to be filled from somewhere with the combined arms units and formations of the Russian Air Force. Let me paraphrase. What he's saying is, if this is real and these guys attacked our border all the way up here, then we're going to have to find the forces from somewhere else to move up here to protect our border now that we weren't doing before. In other words, it's taking away from the Russian effort to fight in the counteroffensive when it happens. Brilliant freaking move. This one line kind of, I laughed today because the Russian defense minister did what they always do when they kind of make threats, but their threats are always really weird. Listen to this from the Russian defense minister. Russia's defense minister said Moscow in response to the attack. Thank you, Summer, for the hat there. In response to the attack, said Moscow will react extremely harshly to further attacks by fighters entering its territory from Ukraine. Why didn't they react extremely harshly now? Right? All these guys do is threaten and bluff. I've told you guys this before. Everything they say is a lie. I mean, again, like, why? Like, they invaded your territory. React harshly now. Don't say, oh, next time we're going to be really angry, right? Next time, not this time, but next time, because there's nothing else they can do. I mean, they can't, they don't have the weapons. They don't have the manpower. They don't have anything. Thank you, Ernie, for the heart on the head there. Final little point to raise. Thank you, Ebbett family and Summer. The final little, I'm a layer. That was very funny. That was very funny. So one of the trolls just wrote, "You are a layer," Layer. And the best part was he put a bunch of smiley faces up, like he was being like sly. You're a layer. We may have to have Wendy make that shirt too. You're a layer. A layer. So the U.S. equipment, there is a weird story out there. Might be true, might not be. Again, we're dealing with Russia. But, you know, there have been multiple reports that these guys who attacked Russia had some U.S. equipment, Humvee and some kind of a mine vehicle, whatever it is. Thank you, Noah, for the hat, and Nate for the fruit hat as well. Hard to say. I mean, the U.S. was skeptical, at least initially, but it's not clear. Let me put it this way. If these guys had a Humvee or whatever, like U.S. vehicles, I think there is a 0% chance that the Ukrainian military, that somebody senior in the Ukrainian military would give them these vehicles is very unlikely. Sorry, my allergies are going nuts. I think it's because of the haircut. I've got like crazy allergies today. I think it's very unlikely that anybody in the Ukrainian, high up in the Ukrainian military, thank you, Ellie, for the hat there, gave them the vehicles. I just don't think so. I think Zelensky and the rest, certainly somebody Zelensky's level, Ministry of Defense's level, thank you, Inspired Woman, is not going to risk pissing off the Americans. Thank you, ABT family. Is not going to risk pissing off the Americans by giving basically the weapons we gave Ukraine to these guys. Thank you, JRD and Bonnie. Everyone's giving gifts today. Thank you guys on TikTok. You're being very generous today. Thank you. Now, that's one possibility. Yep. User 3144 is saying they got it from ISIS. One possibility that was talked about is that they could have gotten these vehicles through basically, you know, ISIS in the Middle East got U.S. weapons and could have gotten them to somebody else who got them to these guys. Hard to say. I just find it very unlikely that the Ukrainian government, you know, it's somebody high enough up to know what they're doing, would sit there and say, hey, let's give some of these weapons that the Americans gave us to these kind of these Russian irregulars. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. The Ukrainians aren't that dumb. Thank you, Verna, for the hearts there. But let's see. They're looking into it. We'll see what the deal is. Thank you, Tom, for the balloons. I'm going to call this a related story, and I'll tell you why in a minute. In a related story, the New York Times reported today that U.S. intelligence believes, now mind you, there isn't a firm conclusion on this yet because there isn't a lot of information, right? But U.S. intelligence believes, thank you, David, for that, that the Ukrainians were behind hang on a second, just dealing with somebody myself, that the Ukrainians were behind the drone attack on Moscow. Hold on. We've got a very cool gift. It's like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. That was so cool. Who was that? Cameo, thank you. That was Rock'em Sock'em Robots, but they couldn't call it that. When I was growing up, that was like a robot game we had playing like boxing, but they were like these robots that would fight each other. That has to be what that was, but they can't call it that because of copyright. Oh, that was so cool. Thank you for that. That was very generous. I could tell it was very generous of you too, but thank you for that. Yeah, that tell you, Rock'em Sock'em Robots, absolutely. So that drone attack, remember a few weeks ago, those 2 drones flying over Moscow, and one of them like blew up in the air over some dome near Red Square, and the other one crashed into a dome and caught on fire but didn't cause any real damage, and the Russians were freaking out. Well, New York Times is reporting today that U.S. intelligence thinks that it was the Ukrainians. Now, it's not clear who, it's not clear how high up it went, it's not clear if Zelensky even knew, but at least from what our intelligence believes so far, they think that the Ukrainians were the ones who did it. Now, let me give you a little more information here. The Times article said it was a loose they believe that it was a loose confederation of Ukrainian units able to conduct limited operations inside Russia, either with their own personnel or with partners working under their direction. So again, it's still possible that these are Russians doing this. That basic, now mind you, like let's start to put all this together, okay? Could be Ukrainians, could be Russians the Ukrainians are working with. Well, what did we just have this week? We had a group of Russians cross the border and go into Russia who are Russians working with the Ukrainians, and the Russians themselves did the attack, right? Very interesting here. You know, in the, listen to this from the article. Okay, again, to put this in a larger context, also from the article, in addition to the drone attack, U.S. officials say they believe the Ukrainians were responsible for the assassination of the daughter of a prominent Russian nationalist. Remember Daria Dugina? Thank you, Summer, for the hat there. Daria Dugina, the killing of a pro-Russian blogger. Remember the blogger that got blown up? Blogger. Calling them bloggers a little is kind of, thank you, Nate, for the hat, is being a little nice to him. He's a fascist supporter of the war, close to Prigozhin, this kind of stuff, like you know, blogger, sure, but he's a fascist war supporter. He got blown up in that cafe owned by Prigozhin in St. Petersburg, and a number of attacks in Russian towns near the border with Ukraine. Also, remember, there was also that bombing of the guy recently as well. I always forget. Thank you, Summer Boot, for that. I always forget what that one was about. Putting all of this together, sounds like the Ukrainians, I'm forgetting if it's called irregular warfare or what you call this, but they seem to be operating a bit of a guerrilla campaign against the Russians. And honestly, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, let me put it this way. When the drone attack on Moscow happened, I don't remember what I said, but my guess is hybrid warfare. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Kyle. Hybrid warfare. I knew there was some, like, I remember the word I was looking for, meaning it's like irregular warfare, right? What I think I probably said at the time with the drone attack on Moscow was, of course, funny. I mean, just because it really is embarrassing to Putin, and the fact that anybody could get a drone to Red Square. Anybody. I mean, somebody, if it's Russians in Moscow, that's still pretty good. If it's asymmetrical, that's another word. Yep. Asymmetrical is actually another good one, because exactly what we're dealing with, the big overpowering Russians and the small Ukrainians finding unique ways of fighting back, right? Sorry, what I was going to say with this. Sorry, I'm like reading your guys' comments as I go with this too. Oh yeah, I know what I was going to say in terms of what my reaction at the time probably was. I was a little worried about sort of the Ukrainians pissing off the Americans. That was it. That was my concern at the time, because, you know, the U.S. is still in kind of this, hey, you know, show you're responsible, show you won't go attacking Russia itself, you know, don't get us in trouble, this kind of a thing. So I still worry that them attacking Moscow might freak Biden out a little bit, and might freak the U.S. military, or might freak the other allies, frankly, as well, thinking if we give Ukraine these weapons, are they going to go after, you know, somebody we don't want them to do in Russia itself? Possibility. Does it freak out Putin? Yes. Does it make Putin now have to, I always say the eye of Sauron from Lord of the Rings, right? Looking over here and then having to go, whoa, right? Sauron's eye keeps looking at Ukraine. Now it's got to look at Moscow because of those attacks on Moscow. Now they've got to worry about putting more troops and more weapons and more intelligence and more electronic, you know, intercepts and everything else to figure out to figure out their security for Moscow. That's just a wonderful waste of time. which is great. And it's time and money and manpower and effort that they're not spending on Ukraine if they're having to worry now about Moscow not being safe, right? It's the same thing that's happening on the border with Russia, right? If you get this insurgency group to invade Russia here and up here, the Russians now have to put more troops along the border to stop the next attack. And those troops along the border are not down here where they should be fighting, right? With all the rest of the fighting going on. Same thing with Moscow, right? You send the drones at Moscow, and now you're taking time and energy to defend Moscow, when if you're Russian, you should be attacking Ukraine. So it kind of makes me wonder. I will say, like, when I saw the comment in the Times too about the assassinations, I didn't think those assassinations were necessarily Ukrainians, but now that I'm thinking about it, interesting. Also, by the way, two final points here. Also, by the way, think back to the Kerch Bridge bombing. Remember, you've got the Kerch Bridge bombing down here, Kerch, Ukraine, about a 12-mile waterway or something, and then a bridge cutting across to Russia. This is all Russia over here. Russia's also up here, but you've got Russia over here. This is waterway here. The Ukrainians, we believe, bombed it. Thank you, America, for the confetti there. I'm starting to wonder if a lot of this isn't these Russian irregulars, basically Russians working with the Ukrainians. First of all, it kind of makes sense that if you're deep inside Russia, right, it'd be easier in principle for a Russian in the suburbs of Moscow to launch these drones at Red Square than somebody to do it from Ukraine and have it go all the way and not get shot down, right? The Kerch Bridge might be easier for a Russian to set things up with bombing that truck that blew up on the Kerch Bridge. Think about this too, because think about this, right? All of these things were happening in Russia. The woman who got bombed, the Dugina woman, who's a fascist as well, she was bombed outside of Moscow. The guy in the cafe owned by Prigozhin, this is the fascist blogger, he was bombed in St. Petersburg. And it was a Russian woman who gave him the bomb, at least from what we know from the videos and everything else. Then you get the Kerch Bridge. Think about this. What I'm saying, like, I'm kind of wondering now if all of this isn't the Ukrainians, but in a very brilliant asymmetrical way where they're dealing with such a big power with Russia that they're finding really cute, sly ways of their smaller fighting back. Think about Kerch Bridge. One of the strangest things about the Kerch Bridge, which was that bridge that got blown up maybe end of September, maybe October, and big problem for the Russians because they use this bridge, no big surprise, since it's down here connecting to Russia, they use this bridge to supply Crimea, but also to supply their troops up here, right? Remember, the Russian occupation is all here. So the occupation here needs this bridge to get supplies. So the Ukrainians, we believe, bombed the bridge, blew it up, but what never made sense about it was, now, mind you, the Russians aren't going to tell us what really happened, but from what we could glean from photographs and everything else, the experts believe that it was a truck bomb, that it was a suicide bomber, right? And, you know, the question was the truck driver, I believe, was a Russian. Did he know he was blowing up this bomb? If he didn't know that it was blowing up the bomb, then somebody put the bomb on his truck. And again, we were sitting there, boat was a possibility, Webadeb, but a lot of the experts I was reading said they didn't think it was a boat. They felt like because of the pictures and the all I know is the damage and everything else they looked at, they felt like it was from the truck level blowing up, not below. But think about this. If it was a truck bomb, first of all, either this guy was a suicide bomber, which is weird, only because, let's face it, that's not a typical cultural thing in Ukraine, suicide bombs, right? The bomb was placed there without the guy knowing, and then it would be the Ukrainians blowing this poor man up without him even knowing it, making him an unwitting suicide bomber, which is really kind of gross. Let's face it. I mean, I'm for Ukraine, but I wouldn't like the idea of some poor Russian truck driver having a bomb slipped in his car and he's a suicide bomber without knowing it. That would bother me. And so again, I've been in the back of my head going, then what happened? Like, because it doesn't make sense to me the Ukrainians would do that. You know who would do it? Some Russians that you hired, some Russian military guys who you hired, who are basically anti-Putin, want to have their own revolution, and they're willing to do stuff. If you hire these guys, and again, your mission for them is, guys, we want to blow up the bridge. If you can set a bomb and blow it up, you go for it, right? But you're hands off. And the Russian, do you think the Russian soldiers who are basically working now for Ukraine, those Russian soldiers probably would have been fine putting a bomb in some guy's car and blowing him up, right? The Ukrainians, 50-50. but the Russian soldiers probably would have been fine. So I wonder whether this, when all of these things, and then the bombings of these different people, I'm not sure Ukrainians directly blowing up people in cafes. I'm like, maybe, but Russians working for the Ukrainians? Oh yeah, I wouldn't put it past the Russians in a second to do something like this. Anyway, I'm just putting it out there that overall, this is very interesting to me. Thank you, Paigey, for the heart there. It's just very interesting to me. Malayothos is saying the gloves are off. And I'll make that as sort of the final point here. As the U.S. said the other day, Russia's the reason we're here. Russia's the reason this war is going on. Russia's the reason these bombings are going on and this invasion and the Kerch Bridge blowing up and everything else. Thank you, Lori, for the heart there. None of this stuff would be happening if the Russians hadn't invaded Ukraine, and if the Russians hadn't invaded Ukraine with the intent of destroying the country and absolutely committing genocide in the country. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for anyone on the Russian side when the Russians complain that, oh, we've had 3 people bombed. Oh, we had our bridge blown up. Oh, someone flew 2 drones over Red Square, and somebody invaded from Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine across the border. Boo-hoo. You're committing genocide in Ukraine. I just personally, again, I've talked about my feelings on this before. I have very strong feelings about what's allowed. If somebody is invading your country and committing genocide, there are very, World War II Nazi Germany, I don't think I'd have a lot of rules. I don't think I'd have any rules for Jews in Nazi Germany fighting the Nazis and trying to stop them from committing the Holocaust. There's probably no rules that I would give them. Probably. Thank you, Nico, for the hearts. You know what I mean? There'd be very few. I don't want to say nothing because I'd have to think about it, but I suspect anything they came up with, I would say, if it will work to stop these guys, do it, because of the horrific nature of what's being done. And this is not the Holocaust in Ukraine, but it is absolutely an effort to wipe out that country. They want to eliminate the country. And the plan was to kill a lot of Ukrainian citizens at the top, to basically go after, who was that, Jeddah? Thank you, Jeddah Mom, to basically go and kill the intelligentsia, the cultural elites, meaning TV, movie, right? These kind of sports stars, the political elites, activists. I mean, they were going to basically kill the top levels of Ukraine to win this war. This is a genocide. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for the Russians. All right, let me keep going here, guys. Real quick here. The drone attacks. Oh, so anyway, I'll talk about my Discord really quick. So Discord, we very cool. What we just finished all the auctions today. I told you today was our big auction day. I've set it up so every Wednesday is the big auction day. We have auctions all week. The auction items are there, but then the auctions end on Wednesday on our Discord. We had a lot of stuff go today. Very cool stuff. I just put up 4 things. We've got 3 more coming that I'm going to put up tonight. But things like Russian fighter jet Russian fighter jet that was shot down over Ukraine. We've got a really cool part of it. It's really neat in a commemorative box. I'm auctioning that off. And again, hey, Cobra, good to see you. Half the proceeds will go back to Ukraine. We get the stuff in Ukraine. Thank you, Thomas. We get the stuff in Ukraine, auction it off to you guys. 50% goes back to Ukraine. 50% goes to support me because I'm doing this full time. This is my job. And I need money to pay the bills because this is my job. I'm trying to think. There's a ton of stuff. There's some really cool Ukrainian themed jewelry that one of you made that I'm going to put up this evening. Really cool earrings. Ton of cool stuff. Do go check it out at our Discord. Thank you, Henry. Was that blah blah for Henry the Hedgehog? I would block me. Sorry, I missed a couple things while I'm talking here. Thomas, I think I'm caught up here. Don't want to miss you guys. Thank you guys for all the gifts. But do check out our Discord, because the Discord is a nice way of supporting my work. It's a nice way of supporting Ukraine. As I said, the auctions are there to 50% of the auction money goes to Ukraine. If you become a paid member of the Discord, that supports me. It's a way of basically supplying an income each month to me, $7.99, whatever it is you want to subscribe at. And that's money that comes to me each month, which helps me out in terms of just paying my bills and having it consistent. So if you want to check it out, please do. It's discord.aravosis.com. Thank you, Rebecca, for the love you. Discord.aravosis.com. You can find the link in my bio on TikTok. Just click that link there. You'll see Discord come up among the options. You guys can find aravosis.com at the bottom, or the tiny URL on the screen for you guys is my Discord link. Final point there, when you go to my links too, feel free to, I've got my Patreon there, I've got my PayPal, everything else. If you can help me out with any of those, I'd very much appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you, JRD. All right, let's keep going here. Prigozhin causing more trouble, wonderfully causing more trouble. Yevgeny Prigozhin is the head of the Wagner Group. Thank you, Rebecca, for the heart. Is the head of the Wagner Group, which is the soldier for hire mercenary group that has mostly been fighting in Bakhmut. They've been fighting all over Ukraine, but they've really been fighting in Bakhmut, which is that town that we've been talking about forever here, right? Prigozhin has been very outspoken. It seems like he has political aspirations. It seems like he wants to take on Putin for the presidency. Of course, he's not going to beat Putin in an election, but I do wonder whether he thinks that Putin may be in trouble with the war. And if he just keeps rabble-rousing enough, eventually Putin will be forced out somehow. Again, it's a dictatorship. Good luck forcing out Putin, but I think this is what Prigozhin's thinking. So he's had a very weird relationship with Putin. He was friends with Putin, but with Putin now, thank you, Kiss Fist, and with the military, he's been attacking the Ministry of Defense in Russia because Prigozhin runs his own Ministry of Defense, basically, right? His own mercenaries, soldiers for hire. So per se, he has to say his soldiers are better than the soldiers of the ministry because he wants everybody to hire his soldiers instead. So get this now. Prigozhin today. Thank you, Stephen, for the boat. That very nice gift there. Thank you for that, Stephen. I appreciate that. Somebody got a lion. All right. You cracked me up. Who did that? That is amazing. Who was that? Wait, I've got to find who. I saw somebody mention the lion. Famine. I'm saying famine. I'm pronouncing your name like it's French. Maybe it is French. Famine or famine. Thank you for that. That was really, really sweet of you. That's so funny. I literally saw somebody out of the corner of my eye say, has John gotten a lion? Maybe that was you. Has John gotten a lion? And I saw it and I was like, a lion. The lion is quite possibly the nicest gift you can get on TikTok. Actually, if not, it's one of the 2 or 3. I mean, it's right there at the top. That was very sweet of you. Thank you for that. Wow, that was very nice of you. Thank you, Red Watts, for the paper cranes. Let me read you the quotes from Prigozhin. So Prigozhin gave an interview today and just went absolutely nuts here. Listen to this. This is great. We are in a situation where we can simply effing lose Russia. He says the war is going so badly that they may lose Russia, that Russia may fall apart and cease to exist. We must listen to this. Okay, real quick. We must introduce martial law. We unfortunately must announce new waves of mobilization, meaning a draft. We must put everyone who is capable to work on increasing the production of ammunition. Listen to this now. Russia needs to live like North Korea for a few years. So to say, close the borders and work hard. We have to prepare for a very hard war that will result in hundreds of thousands of casualties. I mean, you can't pay someone to give this kind of a message. You cannot pay someone to give this kind of a message. Thank you, Rebecca, for the hearts there, for the bullseye. You've got one of the top commanders of the war. Thank you, Jeff. You've got one of the top commanders of the war saying that we're about to lose this. We could lose our entire country. The only way to win this, now, mind you, the only way to win this war that we didn't have to, you've got to wonder if Russians aren't thinking this war that we didn't have to get into to start with, right? That we got into this war because Putin got us into it, but we didn't have to get into it. The only way to win it is by having a nationwide draft, turning the country into North Korea, closing the borders, forcing everybody to work for the military. Oh, thank you, Famine. I'm going to call you Famine. I'm going to guess that's your name for the meteor shower. Thank you. You are very generous. I appreciate that. Is closing the board, becoming North Korea, right? And we should expect that we will have hundreds of thousands of casualties. That is not going to be a positive message for the Russian people to hear. It's great. It's also not a positive message for the Russian soldiers to hear, because you're hearing this and going, really? Like, you're telling us that, mind you, the good news is if the good scenario, right? The best scenario possible is that we lose hundreds of thousands of men fighting in this war and we become North Korea. That's the best possible outcome, according to Prigozhin. If you're a Russian citizen or a Russian soldier, you're going to be like, get me out of this right now. It's like I said, but thank you, Stephen. I am a big believer in marketing and the power of marketing and public relations in a good way and a bad way, meaning either building something up or tearing it down. This guy is constantly tearing it down. It's really good. Thanks, Malethos. It's just really good. His final quote from Prigozhin. Listen to this too. This was great too. Thank you, Flower Lady, for the flowers, and Thomas for the seal. Listen to this for his final quote about demilitarization. He says, the invasion turned Ukraine's army into one of the most powerful in the world and Ukrainians into a nation known to the entire world. Quote, if they, figuratively speaking, had 500 tanks at the beginning of the special operation, now they have 5,000. If they had 20,000 fighters who knew how to fight, now they have 400,000. How did we demilitarize them? He says, now it turns out that we militarized them. He says, hell knows how. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, who was that with the corgi? Stephen with the corgi. Thank you, Stephen. But I mean, one of the biggest arguments from Putin was the demilitarization. Thank you, Happy Beach, for the pearl there, was the demilitarization of Ukraine. And Prigozhin comes out and he goes, we didn't demilitarize them, we militarized them. And as he goes, hell knows how. I mean, it's what we've all been saying, frankly, is that, Russia turned Ukraine into a powerhouse. Now Ukraine has got all those state-of-the-art weapons from NATO. Now Ukraine is like this with NATO when they weren't before. I mean, there were relationships, but not these kind of relationships, right? You didn't have this kind of a relationship between Zelensky and the leadership of Great Britain before, right? I mean, I'm sure with Johnson, I doubt if he even knew Boris Johnson before. Thank you, James, for the heart. Whereas now, like this with Johnson, like this with Rishi Sunak, like this with Biden. I mean, anyway, they created their own monster with Ukraine. I'm going to skip the AWOL news. It's okay, but nothing too. But basically, the British Ministry of Defense says that the number of Russian soldiers going AWOL, away without leave, basically meaning like you abandon your post and you just leave. This year, they've already reached in half a year, not even half a year, May. They've already reached the total number they had for last year. So it's going twice as bad at this point. Thank you, Eva. Oh, Ivan. Thank you, Ivan. Miroslavovich. Thank you for the hearts there, Ivan. I appreciate that. Oh, and the seals. Who gave me the seal? Shane. Thank you, Shane, for the seal. Couple more stories, and then we will do questions. Okay, this one's important because it was pissing people off today. So, the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, good guy, very, very pro-Ukraine. He's great, very pro-Ukraine. He said today something that pissed some people off. So listen to this. Hang on a second, gonna unstar that. Oh, I see the heart there. Thank you, Chief, for the heart. He said, speaking at an event in Brussels, I think that everyone realized that to become a member of NATO in the midst of a war is not on the agenda. The issue is what happens when the war ends. So Stoltenberg basically said that no, Ukraine will not be joining NATO until the war ends. And everybody got upset and said, oh, you're making a concession to Russia or everybody else. No one thought that Ukraine was going to join. First of all, I will say this. They're not wrong in a way. Thank you, Inspired Woman. Meaning, why even say that? Why not leave Russia wondering, right? Why not just make Russia wonder, would NATO be crazy enough to let Ukraine in right now, right? So they're not wrong about that. There was no benefit in him saying this, but he's not wrong in that if Ukraine's at war and Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, then NATO will automatically be at war with Russia, right? Thank you, Bonnie. So we can't do that, right? Because we don't want to have war directly with Russia, right? So I get what he's saying. He's not wrong. He's not factually wrong. It's just probably not the best thing to be saying. He ought to just kind of leave it out and say, well, if Russia doesn't want Ukraine joining, then they ought to just leave and leave it at that. Thank you, Timothy, for the vote, right? Just kind of leave it at that. British Defense Secretary Ben Wallace made an unannounced visit to Kyiv today. The clothing maker Japanese Uniqlo finally left Russia entirely. They, like everybody else, had sort of frozen their businesses or suspended it when the war broke out. They announced now that they're leaving entirely, which is good because for the long term, this is a big deal for Russia for the long term. They were hoping these businesses would just, right, the war would be over in 10 days and all these businesses would open up again. And now, not so much. Final thing, this is an interesting cultural observation. The Orthodox Church of Ukraine officially switched to the revised Julian calendar, which celebrates Christmas on December 25th. Now, what is interesting about that is the Ukrainians, like the Russians, used to celebrate Christmas on January 6th, right? Now they're celebrating it on December 25th, like the rest of us. Well, not the rest of us, but like a lot of the rest of us. Even, well, I'm Greek. We're Eastern Orthodox like the Ukrainians, but in America, we celebrate Christmas on December 5th. The Greeks in Greece, I don't even know how you guys do it there. But what's interesting is this is another sign of how much, in the same way that Russia screwed up by militarizing Ukraine, right? That the demilitarization of Ukraine forced Ukraine to become militarized, right? Thank you, James, for that. They also talked about how they were so worried that the Ukrainians, if we don't invade, there's going to, they claimed the Ukrainians hated the Russians and oppressed Russia and hated our culture and blah, blah, blah. And that's one of the reasons they invaded. And the Ukrainians did not hate the Russians. They had similar cultures in some ways. I mean, meaning you had the faith that was shared, even though different branches of the church, things like that. But the point is, the Ukrainians, a lot of Ukrainians. Thank you, Murray. I was trying to see who gave me that. Thank you, Murray. A lot of Ukrainians speak Russian. There's some overlap there in terms of culture, right? Thank you, Rebecca. Just like us with the Brits, there's an affinity because of the language and everything else. The fact that the Ukrainians are now switching their Christmas so they can get away from the Russians shows you the kind of damage Russia did to whatever cultural bonds still existed between the Ukrainians and the Russians. They not only pushed the two apart, they created a cleavage, right? So the Russians have caused exactly what they claimed they were afraid of, which was this sort of cultural cleavage between Ukraine and them. All right, that's it for the news. Let's go to the questions. Also check out, I have a store as well. Another way to support my work is go to my store, store.aravosis.com. You can find the link at aravosis.com at the bottom of your screen. You can find it on the link in the TikTok profile. The store, all the Ukrainian pieces, and I think most of them are things about Ukraine that we've made. 50% of the proceeds go back to Ukraine. So again, if you help out, thank you, Irvig, with the hat. If you help out in my store by buying something, your 50% of the profit will go back to Ukraine. So thank you for that. All right, guys. Beep, 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 beep. All right, let's. I will pull up my phone and start looking. Remember, you can submit questions via. Thank you, Azamak. You can submit questions via the Q&A link in my profile on TikTok. You guys can just use the bottom of the screen. Thank you for the heart there, Sergeyev. Or Sergeyevna. I don't know if it's Sergey or Serge or which, or if that's like one word. Anyway, thank you. Nancy, thank you very much for the super sticker. That was really sweet of you, Nancy. Thank you. Please do keep the gifts coming, guys. I appreciate them. Have we given Ukraine any aid in terms of naval aid? Interesting question. The Ukrainians did not have much of a navy. I think that didn't they have like a really cool, huge boat? Oh, David, this is an easy one. Before the mods banned David, I mean, go ahead and ban David because he's a troll. But David was saying on TikTok, why don't you want to give this money to the homeless? Because, David, Democrats in Congress actually passed a $3 trillion infrastructure bill that would have helped a lot of people like the homeless and everybody else, and Republicans killed it. Particularly the MAGA Republicans, who are the very people who are trying to kill aid to Ukraine. They didn't want that money going to Americans in need. So if you've got a problem with that, take it up with the MAGA crowd. My suspicion is you probably are MAGA, because your very own people killed the money, tried to kill the money for Ukraine, and killed the money going for Americans who you claim to be worried about. So take it up with them. Wasn't me, and it wasn't the Democrats. That's all I can tell you. Joe Biden tried to spend the money. Don't want to get political here, but you did raise the question. Roshin, SB says you want to see the map. All right. Roshin's very, very attached to her map. She gets very upset when she hasn't seen it in a while. So there you go. She's got her map. Naval aid, I doubt it. The Ukrainians didn't have much of a navy. I think they had one big boat that I believe they sank. I'm trying to remember the details. Help me out, folks. But I believe the Ukrainians sank the boat because they didn't want the Russians getting it. The Russians have an excellent fleet. The Ukrainians did not. So the only aid I could imagine, it's possible, a couple different things going on here. The Ukrainians have created a fleet of boat drones. I forget what they're calling them, but with unmanned some vehicle, whatever the hell it is, but basically boat drones is what I'm going to call them. And they're floating bombs. Did we help them get those boats? Did we, the little drone boats, did we help them create them? Maybe. I don't know. The Ukrainians created the Neptune missile, as somebody just said. Thank you, Happy Beach, for the cake there. There you go. Yeah, Gunarin just said Neptune missiles on TikTok there. Did we help give any technology for that? I don't know. I know the Ukrainians did it themselves. Naval drones, Muddy Mac is saying. I do know the Brits, for example, did provide those helicopters. And these helicopters were meant for, unmanned sea vehicle. I forget what it's called. These helicopters were for, among other things, hunting submarines. These were those, it's not the Seahawks. What were they? The helicopters? We're talking now 6 months ago. Thank you, Magical, for that. Like 6 months ago. Sea King. Thank you, Cal. I was going to say Seahawk. I knew it was a name, Sea Kings. And interestingly, the helicopters were for some other purpose. Oh, they were, I know. Here it was. The Brits were providing the helicopters for sea rescue. And I'm reading this going, sea rescue? What sea? Who's getting rescued at sea when Ukraine doesn't have a navy, basically, at this point? One of the articles I read at the bottom mentioned that the helicopters can also be used for hunting submarines. And I read that and I went, oh, so that's possible too. It's so when I think of naval aid, maybe some of that, maybe some missiles that also could be used, to help the Ukrainians basically hunt the Russian ships, But I don't think there's been, again, they don't really have ships and stuff, not really that many, Could the oligarchs be behind Russian soldiers attacking Russia due to the sanctions caused by Putin's war? I mean, it's possible. It might be a little fanciful, right? But it's certainly possible that is it possible one of the Russian billionaires is so pissed off at Putin because Putin's destroying the country and he's destroying the oligarchs' wealth because of the sanctions that he decided to give some money, to some, people who might want to try to overthrow Putin? It's possible. It's very dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous in a place like Russia to do that because you wouldn't want to be caught as the guy who did it. But, it's possible. Thank you, Bonnie. It's exactly Brad saying risky. The thing is, it's very risky, but it's possible. Sure. I'm not convinced. Now, that does raise an interesting question of who's funding them. But honestly, it could be, but the Ukrainians themselves could fund them because it's worth it. All you need to do is have these guys cross the border a couple times. Honestly, this one is enough. They could use another really good attack, and then the Russians are going to be so freaked out. Honestly, they're freaked out anyway, that they're going to have to reinforce the border. And when they do that, it's taking troops and weapons away from the counteroffensive itself, from way further down south where the counteroffensive will be. So it's worth the Ukrainians spending some money on giving these guys weapons, vehicles, or whatever it would be, because of the benefit it's going to have for the counteroffensive. So that could be where the money is. I was going to say, where's the money coming from? But it easily could be just from Ukrainians themselves. And by the way, could be from the CIA too. I mean, who knows? My guess is we'd probably be careful about funding an actual incursion into Russia. We'd be a little careful about that. In normal times, it's the kind of thing we might do, but who knows? Oh boy. All right, what else we got? I can pull up more questions here, but happy to grab questions from you guys here, whether it's Twitch or TikTok or not TikTok. TikTok, I got you covered. But whether it's Twitch or YouTube or anybody else here, let me see. Ukraine have a newly created Marine Corps. I don't recall. Russia's creating some new units, but they may be air units. I'm trying to remember. I don't know about the Marine Corps. I don't know about that. Does anybody know? I don't know. Otan Bot. Yeah, the Russians are very upset that the U.S. aircraft carrier Gerald Ford arrived in Norway today. And Otan Bot saying the Russian embassy in Norway. Oh, Cheryl. So real quick, because Cheryl got a really nice gift there with the speedboat. Thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate that. Russian embassy in Norway characterized the arrival of the USS Gerald Ford in Oslo as a provocative demonstration of power. Yet the majority of Norwegians welcome the visit. It's anticipated the vessel will partake in a military exercise in the Baltic Sea. Yeah, I mean, again, This is part of the Russians. Of course. Kukla is up from her nap. I will tell you, she's got timing, this mom's dog. It's 5 to 6. And if you'll notice the number of times this has happened at around 5 to 6. Hey, stop that. She does this around 5 to 6, and I don't know why. Oh my God. And of course, my dog is lying in bed looking at her, ready to kill her. I will see. If she keeps doing this, as always, I may have to pick her up just to shut her up for a little bit. Well, that's a good question. Actually, Miles asked a really good question. I mean, and Miles, I don't know. I mentioned this the other day. Like, what was it about this time with the invasion of Ukraine? Miles asks, why does the world care about Ukraine now, but didn't care anywhere near as much when Crimea was annexed back in 2014, when the Russians invaded back then? And, there's a lot of things. I mean, first of all, who knows to some degree? Clearly, the moral leadership wasn't there. I mean, I would say Obama didn't want to get involved, really. Obama didn't want to upset Putin. John, I was watching a really good video from John McCain today. Which person is it? Which one is it, Callum or Mustard? Hold on. Who, Mustard? Sorry, Colonel Mustard had a quick little comment for me on TikTok. I want to see. Who is it? Don't want to lose folks here. Well, I'm going to answer this question because I think it's a decent question, because it's an interesting question, but I'm curious who you're talking about. Was the spammer? But no, it's an interesting question. I think to some degree it was Obama. Oh, gotcha. I got you. Yeah, I saw that. It was a view. Yeah, don't go asking the questions multiple times, Miles. That's what he was getting at. You posted it repeatedly, and try not to post questions like again and again and again, because we can't get to all the questions and it's a bit spammy, just so you know. But the question is a legit question. Obama didn't provide the moral leadership, and when the president of the United States provides moral leadership, it can help. Obama wasn't new at that point, though, Deb. Obama was elected in 2009, or I should say started his presidency in 2009. This was 2014, right? So Obama didn't want to piss off Putin. Ukraine was in no position to fight back, because Ukraine's military in 2014 was not the Ukrainian military they have today. Thank you, Mustard, for the hat. So there's that Ukraine itself couldn't launch a counterattack. Even if we given them the weapons, they wouldn't have been as good. But also, you didn't have Zelensky. I mean, thank you, Rebecca, for the shells. You didn't have Zelensky. And Zelensky, clearly, there is a power that this man has, rallying the country, rallying the world. I mean, clearly, and I would also say as a military leader, Ukraine's done quite well. And when it comes down to it, the guy at the top has got to be the one calling the shots, and he's been calling the shots very well. So a combination of everything, that just sort of made this the perfect storm but I will say it's interesting, because it also shows you how in politics, in media, sometimes stories work and sometimes they don't. Sometimes people care, and sometimes, oh my God, we haven't had somebody spamming about Jesus in a long time. Well, bye-bye, Jesus person. We had a Jesus spammer. We haven't had a Jesus spammer in a while. But sometimes stories excite people. Sometimes they don't. The same story. Sometimes people around the world care. Sometimes they don't. It's like the weather. There's all these different variables that come together, and weather person's going to say, we know. I was going to say it's hard to predict, but it's hard to know when a story is going to catch fire and the public is going to care and the media is going to care and it's going to keep feeding and feeding, or when a story is, oh, that's really sad, and people move on. Just don't know. Don't know. Good question though, but don't know, I do like to delete sometimes. Yes. Sometimes it just catches my eye and I'm like, I've got to delete the troll. It just kind of, catches my attention. Okay. More questions here. More questions. We've had Jesus spammers before on TikTok too. Yeah. They would I don't know who thinks they're spreading the word of Jesus by spamming TikTok forums, but whatever. Oh, that's interesting. Kelly Foss is saying early in his showbiz career, the judges at KVN said that Zelensky had a natural charisma. He's grown more expert at using it since then. I think so. He does. He has a charisma and it works, and that's something. I mean, it's funny. Like people say, "Oh, he's an actor." Like the Russian talking point to try to make him look bad is he's an actor, and it's like, yeah. I mean, a good leader has got to be somebody that's able to connect to people, to emote, to right. I mean, to sort of present to represent. Thank you, Ava, for the bear. To represent their country, to interact. I mean, you've got to be a human being, a salesman, in addition to a policy. Reagan was an actor too, but it's what made Reagan very powerful in many ways. Because we talked about this before. Because Reagan knew, as I said, people who hated Reagan didn't hate him because he didn't know what he was, or because he was bad at the job. They hated him because he was good at the job, and they hated his policies. But he knew how to pull the right levers. He knew how to get the public on his side. He knew all those things that a successful president needs. But you could hate him and think he's a POS, as Casey said, but he wasn't hated because people thought he's just not good at this. That wasn't it. It was his views, his politics and his policies. And Zelensky's the same thing. I think he's not hating him, but I mean in the sense that the actor and all of that makes him a much more charismatic and effective leader domestically, but also internationally. Let's find more questions here. So I'm finally getting my pizza tonight. I told Mom, I was like, I want pizza tonight. Can we just have pizza? Do you believe Putin would start doing desperate acts with the use of small nuclear weapons? No. Nope. We talked about it a lot, but basically there's none of the experts think there's any benefit to Russians using nuclear weapons. They don't get any military benefit out of it. And what they get, which is really bad, is they force NATO to enter the war. They use nuclear weapons on Ukraine, and we're entering the war. And if we enter the war, Russia's toast. I mean, Russia's on real thin ice with this war, just fighting Ukraine. If they've got to fight all of NATO, they're toast. I always say, if they've got to fight Poland, they're toast, let alone all of NATO. But all of NATO, forget it. I'm going to, let me find the John McCain video, because it was very interesting. It's an interview McCain had done back like 2015 or so. I'll pull it up. I can just put it to my microphone. 2015, talking about Putin and, the invasion of Crimea and all of that. And he's talking to British reporter, I believe. Hang on. Here it is. Yeah. British reporter back around then. I believe it's a British reporter asking her about Putin and Ukraine. And this is what McCain, very famous American senator, Republican, hard to describe McCain. I mean, very conservative, but sometimes would go against, like didn't like Trump, and sometimes he'd go against Trump. So very interesting character, but really very conservative on defense, and really knew Putin's number. Listen to this.
Looking at Russia, because you've also been a very strong advocate of tougher action against Russia, be it from the United States, be it from the European Union, be it from NATO. Now that there is this ceasefire plan, and the hope is that it will hold, that probably is the best face-saving way out of this conflict, isn't it, both for Moscow and Kiev in Ukraine?
Vladimir Putin's ambitions were very well known to me and to others. He knew that once Yanukovych left, he had to take Crimea because of Sevastopol. Then he tried the separatists. That didn't work. He armed the separatists. That didn't work. So then he sent in thousands of Russian troops. The fact is that they were slaughtering Ukrainians. There were hundreds killed, thousands in the hospitals. It's terrible. Poroshenko had no choice but to agree to a ceasefire. What is going to happen? I predict to you that it will be another step in Vladimir Putin's strategy to separate eastern Ukraine from Ukraine, and perhaps a land bridge to Crimea. No, it's a very bad result. And again, we would not send weapons to the Ukrainians when they were begging for them. We wouldn't even give them intelligence, because we didn't want to, quote, provoke Vladimir Putin. By showing weakness, we provoked Vladimir Putin.
Who do you mean by we? The United States? The United States working with the EU?
And of course the Europeans, but I wasn't surprised about the Europeans. I was deeply disappointed in the United States of America when they begged us for defensive weapons, and they wouldn't even do that. In fact, it was almost comical. They sent MREs.
Why were you not surprised by the Europeans, you say, not taking sufficiently tough action against?
Because they're dependent on Russian energy. It's obvious. It was obvious. And the United States, it was obvious that we weren't going to assist them, and because they don't want to, quote, provoke Vladimir Putin. And there's nothing that provokes Vladimir Putin more than weakness. We have to understand that Vladimir Putin's ambitions are the restoration of the old Russian Empire.
But he has never said, has he, that he wants eastern Ukraine to be incorporated into Russian territory?
What he has said is, well, just a few days ago, he said, I could take Kiev in 2 weeks. But what he has said is that he wants Nova Russia, which is an old Tsarist phrase, which means he wants eastern Ukraine. He wants to make sure he keeps Crimea. And he would like to see, if he can get away with it, Moldova and the Baltics as well. That's what he wants to see restored. He cannot afford to see a free, democratic, prosperous Ukraine, because the Russian people then would like to be like Ukraine.
That's what I mean. What's amazing is that was John McCain, former U.S. Senator, talking about, dead now, but talking about Ukraine and back in like 2014, 2015. What was amazing is to hear him say, that was McCain, yeah, to hear him say, thank you, Thomas, that, or to hear her say, well, you mentioned him that Putin would want to annex eastern Ukraine. Why do you say that? He hasn't said that. And I mean, that's what he did. He didn't just annex Eastern. I mean, he annexed Eastern Ukraine. He annexed this part as part of Russia. The second thing McCain said is he wants a land corridor to Crimea. He goes, if we let him go, he's going to someday probably go for a land corridor to Crimea. That's exactly what he did. He took this Eastern Ukraine and then this so that he had a land corridor to Crimea. Literally everything McCain predicted happened. He was good on this stuff. He was good on this stuff. Yeah. Really interesting. Really interesting. Anyway, I'm glad you asked about that, Craig, because it was such an interesting interview and it was just so on point, you know, I mean, really amazing. Anyway, maybe one or two more questions and then we can go, guys. It's already 6 after. I know lately we've been going later and later because that's what I do. Yep. No, I'm glad. Thanks for asking about that again, because that was a really good, that was good. No, McCain. Yeah, exactly. That was, you know, the thing is, that's the way Republicans used to be. They were good on defense. They were hawks. They were, you know, a little stronger on defense than some of the Democrats, depending on the Democrat. And some of them are that way, but most of them got beaten down by Trump, and they're afraid to sort of be that outspoken, unfortunately. But let's see, you know. All right, maybe I'll look for another question here, and then we'll go. Yeah, we visited his grave at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. We were there visiting and found his grave there. They've got him buried there. Oops, sorry. Pull the Q&A. Oops, sorry. Looking at my TikTok Q&A. I mean, looking at my YouTube TikTok or whatever. TikTok. Here we go. Oop, 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 oop. Oh, I don't know why you were muted. Well, it looks like you're not blocked from what I can see, which is good. I don't know why you were muted. I was defending that the Ukrainian budget doesn't come from the homeless budget. Oh, and my comment was removed and I was muted. Oh, you weren't the person. You were going after the other person. Okay. KT. Anyway, you were not. You weren't banned. So KT Giadrosic says that they were actually defending. They were defending us and saying the Ukrainian budget doesn't come from the homeless budget, but somebody thought they were going after the homeless thing too. Anyway, okay. Brad says that was, Brad, other people are saying that was a mistake. Any case, if you guys, anybody sees it, if the person's muted, please unmute them. You're not banned, at least I can see that. But if you can unmute them, that would be nice. Daniel, thank you, Daniel, for that. Just to add, another wonderful John McCain moment was having Obama, his political opponent, give his eulogy. Yeah. Also a very interesting, that's a really good point. Eugene. Oh, okay. That's funny. I've got Ukrainians. Kind of cool though. The Ukraine 24 people I've been communicating with, helping them out. They're the sort of the fundraising arm for Ukraine. He clearly doesn't watch my show or he would know we're live right now. I was like, oh, that was funny. But yeah. He had Barack Obama give the speech at his funeral, the eulogy, when Obama is the person who beat McCain when McCain wanted to be president. Excuse me, when McCain ran for president in 2008, and McCain always wanted to be president. So that was kind of a big deal that Obama beat him, and that was sort of the end of it. Thank you for the heart there. Who was that? Jason. I almost couldn't read your name the way. That's kind of cool the way you wrote it, but it took me a second there. I was like, wait a minute. Marcy, thank you for the cat. Sorry. Magical. I will try to see, although the only thing is it doesn't actually tell me who the different people. I have to like click to see who the people are. It's not always really obvious. Hang on here. I'll do a quick look, another question or two, guys, and then we're going to call it quits here. Oh no, did it really? No. Sorry, Dawn is saying to Satan. Dawn, I'm trying not to pick sides here. The DeSantis Elmo, we call him Elmo, Elon Musk. All of us who don't like him on Twitter call him Elmo. But the DeSantis Elmo Twitter live crashed about 20 minutes in and is plagued with technical issues. Thought you should know. Did it really crash though? It really crashed. Elon Musk went in and fired 75% of his staff and literally said, I don't know what they do. Clearly, everything will work fine without them. And all of us are going, I don't know. I would imagine maybe some of your staff could be fired, but 75%, I'm going to guess something's going to go wrong with a technical company. Well, Ron DeSantis, Trump's top challenger at this point. There may be others this is very early in the game, so there may be others that end up winning. But Trump's top challenger for the Republican nomination right now announced that he was running for president today and decided he was going to do it on TikTok with Elon and with David Sachs, who is this horrible Elon sycophant guy. And it apparently didn't go well. Oh my, it did. Thanks, Dawn. Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my God, that is absolutely hilarious. Oh well, no, I mean, I'm happy. Thank you, Paul, for that, for the origami. I'm happy because it happened to Elon. This was Elon's big thing that he was going to get DeSantis and woo Twitter, and it totally crashed on him. That is just hilarious. There are insurgent cells in Crimea waiting for the counterattack. I would not be surprised. I mean, again, the Ukrainians are good. Yeah, Twitter, not TikTok, exactly. Yep. No, I would not be surprised. All right, I'm going to call it quits, guys. Let's do a quick summary of the news that I always do at the end of the show, and then we'll call it quits. We did Discord last night. I'm going to skip Discord tonight because I've got to get some food. I'm famished. But do check out, as I said, I've got, stretchy. I've got 4 different new auction items up. Basically, bottom line, we've got auctions on the Discord. The Discord's another way of supporting my work. It's free, but we've got a section that's VIP auctions where if you're a paid member of the Discord, you can use those. I am putting up, I think, the best combination of auction items I have had ever, I think, this week. Thank you, Ronald, for the heart. I've got 4 of them up. 3 more are going to come. I'll put up tonight. I think they are the best, because one of you, Callum, had warned me, I think. The Americans may not know this, by the way, you Americans out there. The Europeans get paid very often once a month. Like in America, we get paid every 2 weeks. In Europe, you typically get paid once a month. When I was working for the United Nations, I got paid every month at the end of the month. And it was kind of weird because you're kind of worried about your money a little bit because it's coming at you in one lump sum. In the States, every 2 weeks makes it a little easier. I guess we're used to it that way, obviously. But anyway, Callum had said, try to put some of the best stuff at the end of the month because people have money. Like during the rest of the month, we don't have money. So I waited until today. I've got 4 things up. The other 3 are coming. Oh, the military pays monthly. That's interesting. Wow. But the other 3 are coming tonight and they'll be up for a week, which gives you guys ample time for the end of the month to kick in. But do check them out because I think it's probably the coolest stuff I've got. I've got 3 more coming, including some really cool jewelry, as I said, that one of our folks, one of you guys made that are Ukrainian themed jewelry she makes that are really neat, based on the Vyshyvanka, the Ukrainian embroidery that she painted herself. It's really cool. So, but check them out. They're not up yet. I've got them ready to go. They're going up tonight. All right, let me read the quick news summary of the stories we covered tonight, and then say sayonara or das vidanya, or however the Ukrainians say it, which I'm sure they probably say it differently than the Russians. Day 454 of Putin's 10-day special military operation. Thank you, Hedge, for the ducks. We first talked about the insurgents and kind of where all that is now. The fact that basically this invasion of Russia over the last few days, whatever it was, this invasion of Russia the last few days made it now so that the Russians have to, have to put more troops along the border, and those are troops that are not going to be fighting in the counteroffensive. So absolutely. Oh, here we go. We say dopo bacenia. Okay. Double N too. That's interesting. Dopo bacenia. It would it be dopo bacenia, like you pronounce the N twice. Dopo bacenia. Okay, that's what I'm going to say. Let's see if that's any close. Dopo bacenia. Oh, dopo bacenia? Get out of here. Dopo bacenia? But is that the way to pronounce it? Dopo bacenia. But where's the accent? Is it on the A? Dopo bacenia? Ryan, always, when you write words like that, a lesson I've told people, you always want to show the capital letters for the accent. So dopo bacenia. Oh, wow. I wouldn't have even thought that's how you said it. Wow. Interesting. Okay. See, you I told you guys there was a Steve Martin joke, famous American comedian back in the 1970s, talking about France. And he said, those French, they've got a word for everything. And I feel the same way with Ukrainian, because I studied Russian for a year and I know just enough Russian, a little bit here and there, so that I know, hi, Kokla. Hi, I know you want to come. Well, Sasha, oh my. Okay, wait, I have to, oh, I couldn't get the picture. Too bad. I was going to pick up Mom's dog to show you, and my dog, who's laying down asleep, her head is up and she's looking at me like this, like I'm going to kill her. Oh my. But yeah, it kills me, because as much as there's similarities with Ukrainian and Russian and they can understand each other, as a foreigner learning it, there's so many words that are so different. I mean, like I said, goodbye. Dobo bacenia instead of das vidanya, and privyet, it's privit. Everything's a little different. Oof. Anyway, okay. So we talked about the insurgency. We then talked about the New York Times saying that U.S. officials believe Ukraine was behind the Kremlin drone attack. Very interesting. Elon Musk is kind of fascisty. Yes, he is, or kind of fashy. We call him fashy. He's kind of fashy. New York Times gave a really interesting warning from Prigozhin, the mercenary leader, basically saying that Russia's in danger of losing the war and losing Russia unless they have a North Korea-style military mobilization and expect to lose hundreds of thousands of men. It's like, okie dokie, that's going to go over real well. The Secretary General of NATO said that Ukraine basically will not be joining NATO as long as the war is going on. That's not surprising. Wish he didn't say it right now, but not surprising. UK Defense Secretary made an unannounced visit to Kyiv. Dobry wieczór. Dobry wieczór, you do say, okay. Because that's like the Russian, or dobry wieczór. Maybe you say wieczór. In Russian, we learned wieczór, I think. In any case, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine shifted their Christmas to December 25th. Versus the Russian Christmas that was January 6th. And the Japanese clothing brand Uniqlo has finally decided to quit to quit Russia entirely, which is very cool. All right, guys, there you go. Fascista, exactly. I am going to go. I'm going to hope to God we've got pizza that I can cook, because I'm starving. Doesn't matter how much I eat. By the end of the show, I'm always starving anyway. And I will see you guys tomorrow. But do check out the auctions. Like I said, I got 4 up already that are very cool in the in my discord.aravosis.com, and aravosis.com at the bottom of the screen will give you all my links. You guys, the link in my profile on TikTok will give you all my links. But check it out, because I've got a lot of cool stuff and 3 more cool things going up there tonight. All right. Thank you, guys. I will see you all tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern time, US. Bye-bye. And then back in DC this weekend. I'll see you Monday. Well, I've still got 2 more shows coming up, but then back on DC next week. All right. Bye, guys. Bye, you. Thank you, gifters, and mods as well.